Welcome to Wrestling is Real.
To be the man, you gotta beat the man, and I'm saying, woo, right here.
Here's the future of wrestling. You can call this the new world order of wrestling, brother.
Day in and day out, I am the best on this microphone, in that ring, even in commentary.
And whether you like it or you don't like it, learn, by God, to love it, because it's the best thing going today.
Celebrating 9 years of podcast excellence, the King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Welcome to episode 657 of the Wrestling is Real podcast. As this month, December, will mark the 9th anniversary of the program, coming up December 18th, so a couple weeks away. But if we're starting the month already with that, that means a couple of things. Number one, we are starting we're getting into the 10th year of the program. Next time this year, this time next year, it'll be 10 years of the program. And it has flown by since I even thought about the fact of how I started this program and when I've been doing it. And we'll get to roughly about 660 episodes by the time we get there. That's how far this show has gone. And of course, when I get to that point, when we get to the anniversary show coming up in a couple weeks, we are going to be in the middle of celebrating the year in history that is wrestling in 2021, which has been a banner year. I mean, what a transitional year in all respects, because the whole wrestling industry had come out of a complete shutdown, and a couple of the major companies had started trying to get back into business, but without crowds. And for the first 6 months or so, first 7 months, we did not have crowds for the most part, except for a couple of select spots where we did get crowds to come back. With that said, we're back now full speed. And I'm so thankful we're at this point in time now where things have gone to where we can get back to having full crowds again. Even though we might have to still have certain measures when it comes to some places by having vaccine mandates or having to deal with, no social distancing in any of these shows. Masks, mandates, sure. All the different precautions, whether it's COVID negative testing or vaccine mandates or just vaccine mandates in general, all that going on. I like to think that 2022 will continue to go and keep feeling where, yes, every variant that comes across feels like it's a hurricane that's coming through the area, but it's not a hurricane, but it's the same idea. In Florida, when I thought about it, the Omicron variant, and you think about, well, here we have natural disasters that would create lasting devastation to the state of Florida or Louisiana or North Carolina, wherever you live, within the eye of a hurricane, and where we all have that same problem every summer. And when that happens, we do our precautions, we take our preparation seriously, but it's part of, okay, things happen. Anything can happen in a hurricane, and it can and it could. So we brace for it, we prepare for it, we take our necessary precautions. And I'm thinking going into 2022, that's kind of where every variant of this COVID-19, which was COVID-19, will continue. No matter why, how, or answering any of the questions, or why the media is portraying it like it does. It's another story I'm not going to care about. But we're here. And we're going to go through, most likely in 4 parts, I'm going to go through the whole year of wrestling. But I'm going to continue to still talk about current day content, which still ties in to what's going on in the year ender. Because hopefully I'm going to try to get through quite a bit, going through the archives of the episodes, not playing clips back. I'm just going to go ahead and just comment back as to what was going on in time from January 1st to now and where we were. And obviously, we know so much has happened. And just the whole landscape of what WWE has decided to do since the end of 2020, since the Thunderdome, and to current day now, or current time, and what has changed has been remarkable. And going into the ninth program, one thing I could notice more than anything else was how, even though we had Red Notice as a premiere on Netflix, and that gave enough cause to create a storyline that would include Vince McMahon. Well, Vince McMahon has brought himself back in the storyline. We don't know how long this is going to go for, but we know that the initial intent of the storyline, it looks like, besides the fact it was to try to create ratings bumps on both shows, which it did. The McMahon bump, the Vince bump is real. So it did give a bump to SmackDown on a Friday after Thanksgiving. It did bring the ratings up to 2.14 million, I think it was, for their show. And Raw got a little bit bumped back up to 1.6 million. So it works. I mean, he can still come on. He can still command somewhat of an audience, and people will still pay attention to him and what he's doing. That's just the way it is. It works that way. And I can't blame him for doing that. So, trying to make sense of why he's doing what he's doing, of which stars are being used and how they are being used, is the other part we're trying to understand and consider. So, Austin Theory, for whatever reason, he's now, if we're going to say anything, he's probably the same way the chosen one was given to the title for Ken Anderson at one point. Drew McIntyre got that kind of distinction at one point. I feel like that's what's happening here is Austin Theory is the chosen one. We don't understand why yet. We can understand that we could justify it. I mean, you look at him. I remember, I never got to watch Austin Theory in the indies like some others might have seen anyway. All I remember was the first time seeing him was Evolve's 10th anniversary show that was run on the WWE Network. Other than that, I've heard about him being in Evolve, and I've heard about him in just by name, much like I would have listened to Bryan Danielson's name or Davey Richards or Eddie Edwards or Nigel McGuinness back in Ring of Honor days when I couldn't watch it on TV. You'd hear about these guys. You'd hear about them. It's like Nick Gage in GCW, and then he comes into the limelight for a little bit, and we hear about him. Okay, well, those kind of things happen, and I get that part. But I don't know who he is. And I mean, just saying, Austin Theory so far, the gimmick they've given him with the selfies and, smarmy, chicken shit heel, it's not a bad character. But then they decided to give him interaction with Vince, which is astonishing. But if Vince feels like he can do something with him in the camera time they have together, it's obvious. They try to say expect the unexpected. And when Vince and Austin Theory were having a watch along, Vince McMahon, if you didn't know what I was talking about, Vince slaps Austin Theory and says, "You got a lot to learn, kid." So there's a hazing going on now with Vince McMahon. It's enough to keep me interested. Look, Vince, pretty much everything he's done, even if it's been crap, okay, giving away millions of dollars, we've all paid attention. We can't help ourselves. Vince McMahon leads by example, as we always know. I mean, I still watch the clip once in a while that pops up on TikTok where Rob Gronkowski at WrestleMania 2 years ago, where they had him go ahead and jump off the balcony onto the floor for a storyline, and how Vince says, "Well, if you want to know how to do it, I'll do it. Damn it." And 74-year-old Vince McMahon, he goes up to the balcony, takes the free fall down, and it's like, see? That's how you do it. I don't take enough time, and I never say enough about Vince McMahon, but listen, we can complain all we want. The IWC, my wrestling podcast, brother, I talk about anamorously, and with love and admiration and adoration, okay? I have criticized, I have taken some of your thoughts and processing your analytics on things, and I've taken it into account because I like to hear the feedback of what my fellow podcasters are saying, what fans are saying, and take it into this. Take what social media is saying and just gather my thoughts into it, but already going into a podcast like tonight with my own thought process of what's going on. Like, I'll still do that part. And it still comes down to Vince McMahon. Sometimes we just don't want to go ahead and look back at history and what he means to the history of professional wrestling. as a disruptor. That's what he's been all his life. When he got a chance to take the ownership away from Vince Sr. and turn what was a professional wrestling company into what is a sports entertainment model today and figuring it out, he single-handedly was able to go ahead and buy off all the talent, pillage away, destroy every territory in wrestling, period, because there were no prominent territories after WWE came in. And in the 90s, by getting to the 90s, he had basically decimated everybody. And there were a lot of good promotions. So Jim Crockett running NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, Mid-Atlantic, UWF or Mid-South, looking at AWA, working at World Class Championship Wrestling. These were all casualties of what happened. And then even some of those stars from the territory system that first it was Ted Turner bringing on board and creating WCW, creating the larger brand out of Georgia Championship Wrestling, creating the bigger model, buying Jim Crockett Promotions portion, putting it all together, creating a worldwide global brand for himself as well, but not to the extent of what Vince McMahon had, but with the visionary that is Eric Bischoff, taking all of this talent, coming in to the space and creating a very viable, extremely competitive, and quite burgeoning brand of WCW with the Nitro and Thunder eras and all that came for about a good 6 years. I mean, good 6 years they were in there. And if they could have figured things to turn things around back in 99, you know, if they could have avoided the Vince Russo part, not to mention I didn't like Vince Russo stuff, but Trainwreck is a train wreck. There are things I did enjoy from that, and some of the ramifications for Vince Russo's booking in WCW did roll over to WWF and then WWE. But WCW, a formidable foe that almost destroyed and took out Vince McMahon. We know the history on this. Okay? I've read several books on it, right? Death of WCW, Nitro, those books, fantastic. And I'll tell you, the fact he was able to take those WCW down and ECW and then buy their libraries and buy the companies out on the dollar. I mean, just bought them out for bargain basement price. This is the genius of this Vince McMahon. I don't care how old he is. There's still something about the man that is such a visionary, just like how Ted Turner is in the same vein. There's something about him that's just, for a corporation, like Turner, until AOL and Time Warner decided to merge, and then Turner just became engulfed into the two companies. And now we have Turner, we have Time Warner, and now we have Warner. And, Turner's still around and still has a name for herself, especially in the sports brand and home entertainment. But when you have a corporate entity like WWE is right now, publicly traded as well, just like Ted Turner was. But Ted Turner was also such a disruptor for a CEO. It's a rare breed of CEO, rare breed of management at a company like this. And you don't have many people like that anymore. I mean, Dana White still is kind of that kind of respect in UFC, but really, you don't have these type of individuals that are so powerful and so persuasive and so innovative. Maybe not innovative to you, but I mean, really, there were times they were innovative. But in the digital age, it's much tougher. But they have brought on people, and look, for all the respect I got to give to Vince McMahon, he is loyal to his people to a fault, which is why Bruce Pritchard, and Pat Patterson, and Gerald Briscoe, and all the talent agents and all, and everybody in the back has been around for so long, somewhat to the detriment of the company. So I got to give him a little bit of that. Now, that's only to loyal to people he likes, but that's not saying anything to the roster. The roster is expendable, except for a couple of golden boys or golden girls that he has that are just prized possessions. And they are the ones that will be like the fantasy draft. You can't let them go. They're locked in. Okay? Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Roman Reigns. I mean, I don't think you can let those are people that are not, there's no non-negotiable. You can't let them go. They're so important, and they need to stay. And I think there's a number of names that do get that same kind of vein, too. But that's what they're going to do. And Vince McMahon also, to the credit, listen, I'm not trying to be like a praise fest for the man, but he has to get his due. When you look at all the stars that have made their way back with chips on their shoulder, because this man has been able to go ahead and bring them down and say, you're not good enough, and they've cut him. They've, future endeavored, Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, and they all came back, chips on their shoulder, and they came back strong. And they have proven themselves. I mean, the motivation for Drew Galloway and Lashley in the first place, going to Impact Wrestling and going to other organizations, or going to MMA for Lashley's part, that's all part of the thing where they all had chips on their shoulder. They wanted to prove not only to themselves, but we know they wanted to prove it to Vince. And Vince, to the credit of those guys, rewarded both of them. Like, they did have both lengthy title runs, and they are main eventers in all respects. They are. They're recognizable, and they were originally part of the whole process going all the way back to OVW, and they did it. And they accomplished, and they showed there was a payoff to the investment, to the time and the resources and everything was spent to get Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley where they are. Roman Reigns, he's had his ups and downs too, but look where he is now. If you are totally set on Vince and saying, damn it, I'm going to come in, I'm going to prove it to Vince, because I really feel like the ones that are going to get the biggest push, or the ones that are going to get the best spot, are the ones that absolutely, like, Vince has complete, is just totally invested. It's like, that's my girl, that's my guy. So when I look at Roman Reigns, they spent so much time on him. John Cena, so much time they spent on him. And loyalty. Is it good? Is it bad? Yeah, listen, this is not for everybody. To go ahead and play loyalty to a Vince McMahon who is ruthless, diabolical, and is a corporate tyrant. He's a tyrant in this wrestling business. He's cutthroat. But that's what you have to be successful in this business. For him to stay on top as he has had to be tyrannical. He's had to be ruthless. He's had to be a piece of shit. He's had to be an asshole, and he's had to be a scumbag to do what he's done. And we all know that. And I'm sure people could say that to him right now, and he probably takes it with pride. Because this man is old school thinking. And that's another thing that people don't understand. People don't really take into account how old school the man is and what he's done with his company. Now, we all want to play Monday morning quarterback, or Tuesday morning quarterback with Raw, right? And we want to go ahead and bitch and moan and complain, and we want to give our take as to what WWE is supposed to be doing. And you know what we do too? You know what the podcasters out there do as well? You know you do. You inject WWE style booking into AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan, and all of these, because they have brainwashed you. Then you see, Bryan Danielson, the thought of getting him with Adam Page. Let's go and do things with Adam Page, or Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson, and let's just create all this faction of WWE stars invading AEW. It's something that you would think Vince McMahon would go and put together. He would sign off on that. So people get that thought process. I'm like, no. ECW had its own way of booking. WCW had its own way of booking, whether we liked it or not. But WWE has their own way of booking. And to think that Tony Khan is going to use Vince McMahon's playbook, no. Tony Khan is trying to take the best parts of wrestling, and he's trying to create AEW into something that is a different feel altogether. He's trying to be innovative in the points of trying to create things to create prestige, create a real sense of competition, and to create importance on every show. the fact that we saw Lee Moriarty and the win he had on AEW Dark this past Tuesday night, that was made a just cause for why he was in the match with CM Punk tonight on Dynamite. So that right there, like, I watch AEW Dark and Dark Elevation. Those shows are meant to be padding up records so that you have impressive looking records when any of these stars go up on Dynamite or go up on Rampage. Okay, so it's trying to show rankings, records, the kind of things we look at in our sports franchises as to determine who's good, who's bad, who should we root for, who should we be interested in, who should we get behind. That's what happens. The fact that tonight the Gun Club took on Darby Allin and Sting because they were undefeated. And if you watch Dark and Dark Elevation, you would have seen all their matches for the most part. I think, I know once or twice we saw them on Rampage, right? But for the most part, 9-0, Gun Club, and they got on here. And it's not because we had the whole thought process, Billy Gunn, washed up WWE guy from the Attitude Era. No, it's done differently here. But when you try to go ahead and look at everything from the lenses of WWE booking, which we know we get DQs, we get way too many main events of stature that could have been held off for a good pay-per-view match. Like the fact that Vince and the team still do that, well, just go back to when WCW did it. Because remember, some of the things to outmaneuver or outscore in the ratings WWF, WCW, some of those things have been taken on by WWF or WWE now. Okay, when you go back to Goldberg and Hollywood Hulk Hogan, July 6, 1998, they announced it 3 days before. You didn't have to do that. You announced it on Thunder on Thursday to put the show on Monday Nitro. That was to pop a rating. Well, the same thing's being done now, but then the matches we have on some of these, we don't even have to get to this high level of matches. And even if we do, these big high-profile matches that could have been on pay-per-view, giving away the pay-per-view matches, and they're just DQing them like crazy, or giving us losses, one person loses, the other person loses, and making no stature when it comes to, like, WCW was the same way with their mid-card titles. The TV championship was on WCW Saturday night, and all of a sudden Hacksaw Jim Duggan picked it up from the trash. Remember that? And he defended on WCW Saturday, and then they dumped it again. And then, of course, the U.S. heavyweight title, nobody remembers that on WCW during the Attitude Era. It meant something before, but not anymore now. And then the tag team titles didn't mean anything either in WCW. But then also the heavyweight title didn't mean anything for a while once you put the belt on David Arquette. Then how many times are you going to change the belt from Diamond Dallas Page to Hulk Hogan to Kevin Nash to Jeff Jarrett and da-da-da-da-da? Okay? I mean, there's something about where AEW does think of prestige. They can concern themselves with that. That's what they want to do. With WWE, it's a couple of different titles of the heavyweights or the main event titles: Universal, WWE Championship, SmackDown, Raw Women's Championships. Period. The tag team titles mean nothing. IC title, US title mean nothing. I mean, when the IC title has meant something, it's because they have put it on somebody that was going to go ahead and get a push down the line, and they were going to do something with. More as just a prop for somebody that was basically saying, hey, we're getting this mid-card belt because we think we got something in store for this star. So Damian Priest is holding on to this belt right now because there's something in store for him. With Shinsuke Nakamura, I feel like it's a prop he's being given just because, they haven't done right in the first place, so let's just give him some prestige and give him a belt so he has something to work with. And when we look at it down the line, it looks like Rick Boogs is the person they're trying to really build off of with that attachment. Same thing with Happy Corbin being attached to Riddick Moss or Madcap Moss. Same thing where Omos is being attached to AJ Styles. Does it work? Is it any good? I don't know. I mean, they rather do this where they have stars that are accompanying together so they can create makeshift tag teams, or they can also create other things. That's just what they decided to do. Now, in the show itself, when you look at what they've done this past week on Raw and SmackDown, okay, you gave away matches, pay-per-view quality, because their only competition on Monday night is Monday Night Football. And they're not winning, not even close. All they're trying to do is now just put up big matches and big storylines just to try to keep the ratings somewhere near where it's supposed to be. Just to survive the year, survive Monday Night Football's onslaught of tens of millions of viewers so that maybe the ratings would come back up in January, after the Super Bowl. Other than that, they come back right now after the playoffs start up, so they'll have that for them. But what else are you going to do? Now, before Monday Night Football started on Monday night, they gave us Seth Rollins, Finn Balor, and they tried to make something big there. But, they did announce Seth Rollins gets his title shot at day one. That's good. Match was good. Then we got Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan signing the contract for a match they're actually going to book next week, because they have to put matches of marquee value on the shows. They have to do it. They have no choice, because they're desperate to keep the ratings up to a certain level. If they just give us a run-of-the-mill show, then it's not going to work. They even give us a tag team title match, RK Bro and Dirty Dogs, which we know there wasn't much there, but it's RK Bro, and it's a draw to that show. Then you have Edge and The Miz now in a new feud. Look, if you want to bring back Beth Phoenix and go, with an intergender match, so we could kind of do the same thing with John Cena and Nikki Bella did a couple of years ago, we could do that. That'd be fine. If we could see parodies of Edge and Beth Phoenix by Maurice and The Miz, I'm all for it, if that helps to build a match. I don't think it could be that bad. I know Edge has been more of the diabolical type of matches, killing and destroying people, but with Randy Orton and the likes of Seth Rollins, but this is a different style storyline, and I'm sure Edge will have the wherewithal and the resources to make it work. Same with The Miz. They're both professionals here. They've been around long enough. They're veterans. We haven't seen these guys face each other, I don't think, so why not do this here, right? I'm not against it. I know people are crapping on it, but you know what? I don't mind it at all. And then you have, some stars you've tried to build up that are just filling a spot. When you look at Street Profits and Alpha Academy, it's just a feud. They're just feuding on TV. It's not going to pay-per-view anywhere. Damian Priest now going Jekyll and Hyde. There's something where we could go somewhere with him. I don't know. The dual personality gimmick could work, and maybe they'll get some push out of that. I don't know how far it gets them to go. Does it get them towards a title match? You make him a heel. Here's the thing. If Big E survives Seth Rollins at day one, do you put Damian Priest somewhere up in that main event picture? Probably not, because, or you know what, it's not that. Because you want to make him a good, significant star that can then go into the Royal Rumble in January and have a good showing. And all of a sudden, he goes in dual personality gimmick, and then he just starts eliminating stars left and right, maybe gets a win, and then earns a title shot. Because anybody right now that's going to be built up after Seth Rollins or Big E, and whoever wins that title match at day one, they're going to face who's ever winning the Royal Rumble. That's what I think. I don't know if they're going to do anything beforehand where they'll have... I know they're going to have that pay-per-view that will be just before Fastlane, I guess, or whatever it is. That'll be the one that'll be before WrestleMania, that they'll decide to do before then and see what happens there. So there's just, they have talent that's in the mid-card, and they're just feuding with each other, and they're just filling spots. It's dancing cards. Dancing partners. So you got Street Profits and Alpha Academy, Mysterio's in the Hurt Business. And somewhere where Lashley's also involved in this, and that's just giving Lashley something to do. And then we know that Liv Morgan had a team, Becky Lynch had a team, do a 10-woman tag. Okay. Which doesn't mean anything except for the fact they just decided to go Survivor Series thought, because, we could do another match like that. And Kevin Owens did win by disqualification and now is added into the title match, but I don't think Kevin Owens is going to be anywhere, there's nothing that makes me think Kevin Owens wins that title. But I think they could do something where Seth Rollins could pin Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens takes the pin on the way out, leaving his contract, and Seth Rollins is champion leading into the new year. Because I really think that's what's going to happen. If I had to, and I keep saying that because there's nothing that's being done to change Big E's image in terms of taking him away from the New Day. His gear, his promos, he's not much different than what he was in the New Day. This is not a new persona. This is not a different version of Big E that we're getting that is made to be main event for a long time. He's getting a Kofi push. He's getting this is Kofi Mania all over again. If anybody else wants to dispute me on that, go right ahead. You can reach out to me. You can let me know. But that's what I think it is. And that's just how I see it. As for SmackDown, you start with Roman Reigns because he draws. And you know what? It's one of the things I absolutely do not want to miss every week. And that's it. And, you know, when they're looking at things right now, Roman Reigns has no one else to go and take on. So we know it's probably either Drew McIntyre, Jeff Hardy, and Brock Lesnar that could be opponents for Roman Reigns down the line. So now Jeff Hardy has now become back to a top level again. They have heated him back up to near main event. I mean, you know, it wasn't that long ago he was losing on main event. Now, anytime they need to heat him back up, they can. They can do the same thing with Dolph Ziggler. They can do the same thing with Sheamus. That's what they like to do. And they're just disposable. They're usable. They serve a purpose whenever they're called upon. So Jeff Hardy gets to go and come back up here, makes another run towards the title maybe. Let's see what happens. Okay. And then working again with Madcap Moss and Happy Corbin, just put some match together. People were watching it. You know, I looked at it. That's fine. Then you got Sheamus basically mentoring Ridge Holland. That's interesting. And, you know, adding Cesaro and Sheamus into the mix as former tag team partners. That's somewhat interesting. I'm not taking much of Los Lotharios. They're just dancing partners with Boogs and Nakamura. Like, I mean, has Nakamura even defended an IC title since he won it? I can't remember. And then Charlotte Flair just wants to embarrass Toni Storm. She's a non-factor. Like right now, there's just nobody right now. Roman Reigns is in the same category where Charlotte Flair is such a top star, and there is nobody even being made serious competition for Charlotte Flair. Like Toni Storm was made to look like a joke. Shotzi was made to look like a joke. And whatever else. I mean, you know, think about it. They're not giving her Sasha yet. And Sasha just gets to play, you know, they're putting her out as dancing partners with Naomi. And Shayna Baszler doesn't get anywhere towards that belt. So that's what sucks right there. It's like Shayna Baszler can't be near the women's title. And Sasha Banks, they're not putting her up for that. But I'm guessing they're going to hold her over until WrestleMania, which I think what they should do is Shayna, Sasha, Charlotte should be a three-way at WrestleMania for the SmackDown Women's title. That's just my thought process. And there's a lot you could do with that. Now, the other part, too, is I don't know, man. Sami Zayn with a Universal title shot. So he'll get it. They'll do it. Maybe they'll do it, you know, in a week or 2 weeks. And it'll be a quick squash. And then something will come up where Brock will come out from the limelight and will come and debut. Or we'll just come in and attack. And then we'll have a face-off that will lead into their feud going into WrestleMania. Because like I said, I don't think anybody in the Royal Rumble match is going to take on Roman Reigns or is going to challenge him for the title. I don't see that happening. So it just doesn't look like that. You know, there's no way to organically build somebody as a championship contender as a legitimate, serious one. The only time a championship contender is serious, really serious, is if they win the Royal Rumble match or they win Money in the Bank. It's those two opportunities. So if they're going to make it like that, why don't they just make more importance and say, hey, you need to keep building yourself, and the announcers need to keep mentioning that, listen, they're working themselves on the line because they know their opportunities are abound coming up. Because down the line, Royal Rumble will be coming soon. And Money in the Bank will be coming also. So there's always opportunities to get that instant chance at opportunity at becoming champion. You know, those 2 guaranteed chances that people should be investing in for a long term. But, you know, in the meantime, you're not building serious contenders right now. You know, day one's going to get built with what they're going to do with what they have, and that's it. So, I mean, day one, it'll probably be Toni Storm and Charlotte Flair. We'll probably get a rematch with Liv Morgan and Becky Lynch. I mean, it's not going to be much of a difference what they're going to do. They're just going to have matches, because then after that, everything just kind of gets reset. Everybody will probably keep their belts, and then we go to Royal Rumble. But right now, there's at least a few things they're doing to try to go ahead and build something off of during the dead time up to day one, and then after day one, we start WrestleMania season without a Thunderdome, which is even more important. And remember, next year, the pressure is on this company to make sure they are building up a big enough audience out there so they can go ahead and they can really build some hype for all their matches, and all these stars are trying to build up to go up against these top-notch champions so that they can possibly have them to headline these big stadium events they have next year, of which there are 8. They have to do something here. They have to figure it out. They got 5 here in the States, 2 in Saudi Arabia, and then 1 that's going to go out to the UK. They have a lot of big shows to fill. And first one's that Royal Rumble show. They have to build that up. And it just can't be the Rumble match. They got to have other matches ready to go to fill out some stadiums. And you just can't put the same competitors out there and expect to fill, 70,000, 80,000 seats at a time. If they're going for big gates, and you got to figure that out. And then even after that, what are you going to do if you can get some of these stars from NXT that are going to be immediately pushed up to the main roster? Because that's what's going to happen too. I believe that. I'm interested on the significance that's coming up when it comes to WarGames coming up, and see what that'll become and what will come of it. Now, do I want to do a show about WarGames on Sunday night? I don't know. Maybe I will. I'll think about it. Because then of course, the year in history is going to take a while. That's why I started in December. I was going to do it last week, but there was just a lot to talk about. So let's go ahead and give it some time. We'll go ahead and come back to it. And maybe I will do an extra show, and I'll just use it for a reason, not just to go ahead and talk about NXT TakeOver WarGames, but also talk about the year in history and continue the multi-part series that I'm sure it's going to be like this because of the way everything's going to go. Because January is going to be very busy. Day one, the WWE's Day 1 coming up on January 1st. Impact Hard to Kill, which has been very good the last couple of years. Going to Gillies in Dallas, Texas. Or should be the Factory in Dallas, Texas. January 8th. And then Royal Rumble, St. Louis, January 29th. I mean, there's a lot of shit going on. And keep an eye on all that. Just saying. Now, let's talk about AEW and what they've done with the Invisible Door. So, they have a lot of stories they're building up right now. They're doing some good matches. And, they have a few events they're building up right now before they get to Revolution, which is at the end of February. They're going to go with Winter is Coming. They already built a title match with Bryan Danielson and Adam Page. They're going to go ahead and take that feud right there. They're going to give us that title shot, that title match, and give it to us then, which will be a great thing to have right there at the end of the month, or the middle of the month, in 2 weeks. And then we'll have Battle of the Belts January 8th. So the same night that we have Hard to Kill, we'll also have Battle of the Belts. So that will be a very busy night for me right there. We'll do a post show on that Saturday night to do Hard to Kill and to do Battle of the Belts. And I haven't seen if they changed the time of Hard to Kill that night. It's an 8 o'clock show. And so I don't know what they're going to do in terms of when Battle of the Belts is going to run. I haven't read that part yet. Now, they have not said as to what time the show is going to be on. We don't know that yet. But what they're doing right now, CM Punk, MJF, building that feud up is great. Adam Cole's dealing with, and the Super Click dealing with best friends right now currently. They got a lot of things they're doing right now that are really very interesting. So there's a lot of that going on, which is good. Now, before I get into the year in history, a couple little extra notes I'll make mention of. Davey Richards is back now in wrestling on some shows that I can actually watch on television. And he's joined MLW. And they put him into some featured matches. And he won the 2021 Opera Cup. MLW's Opera Cup. And also Enzo Mori is set to debut in MLW. And he'll be part of that, which will be pretty cool. They're interesting over there. They bring a lot of different people over there. So it's, also the Aztec Underground, the Dario Cueto, now Cesar Duran kind of storyline, and all that's going on there is quite interesting when you look at what they're with MLW. And I have to watch that episode coming up after I finish up here. So there's that to go and look at. So let's run into the year in history. I'm not going to go too long on this, but we'll go and see what we can cover in this part 1. So we go back to January, and just remember at this point we had just come out of a Dynamite that was a memorial show in tribute to Brody Lee, or John Huber, who had passed away just right around Christmas time. So we had that story happen right then and there, which was just a lot that happened right there, and really did shock a lot of people when it came down to it. At age 41, he had passed away on December 27th or 26th. And then we started looking at, we already knew there were things that were going on when it came to Bound for Glory and seeing Kenny Omega make a display, the Bullet Club with Gallows and Anderson, and they decided to bring them in and invade into AEW, and we had a reunion of the Bullet Club on Dynamite. These were back when they were doing the shows back at Daly's Place in Jacksonville with a limited crowd. So at least we had that for the most part of the year. Meanwhile, WWE was still Thunderdoming. Yeah, because they had already moved from Performance Center to Thunderdome by this point. And then, I don't think, we still didn't have MLW yet. We still didn't have NWA yet. And we still didn't have, and Impact was still going on. Like Impact was just doing empty shows at Skyway Studios. Now, then we started getting into Royal Rumble season of last year, and they made a thing where they were going to have Adam Pearce take on Roman Reigns for the Universal title. Remember that part. And like I said, what a hell of an Impact Wrestling Hard to Kill pay-per-view we had to deal with leading up to everything, where Kenny Omega was teaming with the Bullet Club to take on Rich Swann and the Motor Machine Guns. And then the Rumble match, we started seeing some of the underlying matches that were going on leading up to things. January 17th, episode 586, was when I reviewed Hard to Kill, which was a hell of a pay-per-view. And to think, Josh Alexander at that point, wasn't even X Division champion, but he would become X Division champion in the course of a year, move himself up to the world title, and then now win it for just a couple of seconds after Moose cashes in on Bound for Glory and just takes away the dreams. So Josh Alexander gets a taste of the world title by the end of the year, after Ethan Page has left Impact Wrestling to go along with different ventures, only to team up with another tag team with Scorpio Sky, but that's what he decided to do. And Josh Alexander, they put a lot of work into him throughout the year, but then you just make sure to go and keep him, in something important, and which they're doing. So they're keeping him away from the world title because now they got Jonah, which I don't think I got a chance to watch Wrestle House 2, which I guess encompassed all the Thanksgiving night Impact Wrestling, so I got to go back and catch up on that. But we know that Jonah and Josh Alexander are both at each other right now, which is the next thing coming up. So that's a featured feud for Josh Alexander. And then somewhere down the line, hopefully he'll get a chance to go after that world title, but Moose has other people to take on first. At this point, Deonna Purrazzo had already started going with her run as Knockouts champion, and she had beat Taya Valkyrie, who was on the way out of Impact Wrestling, en route to NXT at this point, which was quite interesting. And then we learned about WrestleMania plans and that there would be, in fact, fans in Tampa for the show for WrestleMania 37. The plan was to go and do that. Expect 25,000 for each night on each show, but they couldn't get that many there. But they get roughly about, 15,000, 20,000 for each show. So at least you had the social distancing. You had the people there. Something happened. And we were just kind of rolling on the Royal Rumble. But, everything just felt different when it came to Thunderdome time because we just didn't care. I mean, it's tough to really get into that with all the screens. I will never want Thunderdome to come back. I hope we never get back to that again. Because that was just, I know it was for the time being, but those shows sucked. Like I don't think I could ever go back to watch those again because it just felt so odd to watch those shows with the pumped in crowd and seeing all the people on the screens, the Zoom calls. I would never want to go back to that again. I hope we never have to go back to that again. But I appreciate what was done. Then we got one of the big announcements when it came to the financial end of WWE right around Royal Rumble, when they were already getting some pretty big hype for the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, is that they had the financial news that Peacock had gotten the exclusive streaming rights for WWE Network and decided to move it over, which was huge for them. And remember, when we go back to that story and you look at what was happening here, a lot of things came after that. We started hearing about the talks that WWE might be up for sale by Comcast, might buy them. We heard about that part. And as I mentioned, a multi-year agreement with Peacock getting exclusive streaming rights for WWE Network. And so far it hasn't been perfect, but it's been there. And, I'm spending less money than I was before. 5-year deal worth more than $1 billion over the time period. And who is the one that was responsible for this? WWE President and Chief Revenue Officer Nick Khan. Again, another notch on his belt. And the accomplishments being done by someone like a Nick Khan, you can't help but know that Vince McMahon will follow the lead of wherever Nick Khan thinks things should go with the company, because he's proven himself over and over. He has made that man more money than you could imagine. I mean, and really, not even just so much the money that he has made for him, but it's the longevity. It's the long-term investment opportunities that have been brought on thanks to Nick Khan and what he's doing right now with the product. He's, there's this whole thing with Nick Khan and the people he brought in from CAA and the infrastructure he has brought into play. Besides the fact we have all the negative things to talk about when it comes to all these terrible releases going on, which we're going to talk about that in some of these parts of the here in history of wrestling. But at this point, I mean, you just look at what was being done. Getting the Peacock deal was huge. I mean, for WWE Network, it was smart for them when you look at everything because of how all these streaming services, it's really forward thinking because the network didn't have to be by itself. I mean, we started to see what was going on where there are other separate streaming services out there. And WWE Network could have done what they were going to continue to do. But what they got to do was, instead of taking the onus on them and having to continue to put content out and have to do everything in-house, by being able to let Peacock take this and then limit the amount of content they had to go and put together to fill the whole schedule of WWE Network, they just attached themselves to Peacock and said, okay, we now are just going to do on-demand. We're not doing a live stream of content, and we'll run the pay-per-views. And that's it. So there's a steady stream of content that's just part to complement the rest of the Peacock service to warrant $5 or $10 a month. And we know that, roughly 1 million people probably got onto that service, as was WWE Network, and they moved over. Yeah, it worked. And I think you might have got more people that got on there or already had the service in the first place. So you might have attached more viewers on there anyway, because they might have been Comcast subscribers or Xfinity subscribers rather, and they would have bought onto it anyway. and they would have already had it. So this was a hell of a move and a banner announcement for WWE at this point. It was a big deal for them when they got that. And then I talked about the streaming wars and everything that was going on because HBO Max, Netflix, you have Paramount Plus, you had Disney Plus, you had all these different services now that are just part of our streaming catalog of services that some of us subscribe to. Many, maybe all of them, maybe some of them. And you see how much importance there is of having all this and where it's gone. It's incredible. And so there's that part to look at and consider as well. Like what's going to happen down the line, I believe, is Bleacher Report we've been hearing about now is going to be going by the wayside. And what it sounds like is going to happen is that all the sports content that is being run through Bleacher Report will then move over, or they'll just add it into HBO Max down the line, which is part of Warner, which is part of Turner, which is part of all of that. So they can absolutely do that part. And we also know where Discovery is also part of the deal when it comes to Warner Brothers and what they're going to do with all that there. So, like, I can see where AEW falls along into another bigger streaming service because it will not be on Bleacher Report. And even though they'll have Fight TV, but Bleacher Report and Bleacher Report Live will change into things where now the BR Live app has gone. Now it's gone into Bleacher Report, the app. And I think eventually Bleacher Report might then get pushed over into an HBO Max down the line. I think that kind of consolidation happens sooner than later. That I think could happen too. We go into February and we get the Royal Rumble. And when I looked at Royal Rumble this year, you get Edge eliminating Randy Orton in a 30-man Royal Rumble match for a world title match at WrestleMania, which we know came down the line to go up against Roman Reigns, but then eventually Daniel Bryan got added to the mix. And also seeing Bianca Belair also getting her time to shine, eliminating Rhea Ripley, who was the last person left, in that Royal Rumble match to get where they were. Drew McIntyre was champion here, and they gave him the nod and gave him a Goldberg, a perennial veteran, a legend, and he got the win over him. Right? Wasn't a good match, but at least there was a significance of having that. And Sasha Banks at the point was champion here as well, who eventually would have to go and take on Bianca Belair down the line because Bianca and Sasha would have to face each other after that Royal Rumble match. So I mean, we had good matches going into WrestleMania. Where there was no question there. We were all happy about WrestleMania season last year with those two featured matches. We were talking about the SmackDown Women's title and the Universal title matches. With Drew McIntyre, it was fine. You know, when we got down to it, we're happy to go and see him here as champion. That was no problem there. And so things were where they were. And then we got Bad Bunny, and how long has it been? It feels like forever. Now that Damian Priest has changed more into this heel-like character, that he worked with Bad Bunny and all of that. And the importance of Bad Bunny and what he was able to do here of, you know, getting to go and live his dream of professional wrestling because he watched it as a kid. He definitely loved the product. He definitely went out and trained. He definitely did a masterful performance for what he was able to do in the ring. He did not embarrass himself. He did not embarrass anybody out there. He held his part with the boys. And you can't knock that there. So Bad Bunny worked with Damian Priest. That definitely helped a lot with Damian Priest for himself, but I think he hasn't really made any steps up since then. When I look at things. Okay, I got a few more minutes left. I'm going to go and just try to get into March before we get into that. And then remember we started getting just, you know, we know we were going to get matches at the Royal Rumble, and then we just had to like figure out, okay, what are they going to do to entertain us between now and WrestleMania? Because we knew we had certain matches, and WWE is not going to go ahead and give us long-winded storylines except for a certain number of people that are going to get the opportunity to do that. That's just not something that this company is going to do. Just they don't choose to do that. Instead, we had the match where Well, we had Nia Jax, which unfortunately one of the last things that we're going to remember about Nia Jax when she got released. And because now she's not going to be wrestling anymore, we're going to remember My Hole. Remember that part? And then, and there was just not much going on right now. And then we had the Forbidden Door. Remember we talked all about that? The New Wrestling Alliance. New Japan Pro Wrestling partnering with AEW and Impact Wrestling. So regardless of what's going on now, when it comes to AEW and Impact Wrestling, initially they were in a triangle in a partnership where not only were they, both taking advantage of New Japan, but that also AEW and Impact decided to work together, which is where we had Kenny Omega and Christian Cage being the Impact World Champions for significant amounts of time and having that happen. And with Kenny Omega, I did feel like there were certain stars when you look at Moose or if you look at Rich Swann and some other stars that Kenny Omega did take on for said world title, that he did bring up a level because they got the matches with him. With Christian Cage, same thing, but then Josh Alexander got the big win over Christian Cage, really made him a main eventer in that brand. And so they decided to do what they were going to do. And all we've noticed is certain stars coming from New Japan through the Forbidden Door. So we've had Minoru Suzuki, we've had Hikuleo, we've had Jay White come through the door, we've had Finn Juice come through the door. Like, there have been a lot of people that have made their way through. We know Kenta also making their way through the door as well. And eventually we might see Okada, Kazuchika Okada, the Rainmaker. We might see Kota Ibushi. Who knows? Maybe there's somewhere down the line where there will be the chance of that. But we don't know where they would go with that yet. But there was that opening that really opened up everybody's eyes. That while WrestleMania season was in full effect, that AEW and New Japan made this relationship possible. And by the way, Nick Khan tried to go ahead and jump in on it first. But with no background, no clout at all in this business. I mean, I give him credit for trying. New Japan took a meeting with him, but there was no way that Nick Khan was able to make that set up with a traditional pro wrestling outlet like there. And Nick Khan being the conduit, I don't think it was going to work. But Tony Khan found a way to make it work. That's very, very surprising that he did. So Kenta attacked John Moxley. We had that. The Bullet Club was teased after Dynamite went off the air. And we know that Impact Wrestling has been working with the New Japan folks because Finn Juice has been here. You have Hikuleo working with Chris Bay. And Minoru Suzuki's made his way in. Kojima's made his way. Satoshi Kojima's also worked his way in. Have they been like the top of the barrel of New Japan? No, but they're working in the relationship and they're being used as such. I mean, it's good to see because we wanted to see this exchange. We wanted to see this because Ring of Honor screwed that up. I mean, we didn't see some of these stars since the Supercard of Honor, the G1 Supercard. And then this relationship got restored. And also because of the fact that New Japan was already starting to run shows again, or trying to go and start running shows in North America again, which they have done several so far. And the fact they get the TV coverage on AEW Impact helps them out in some way, shape, or form. So that was the one thing that we're doing that was very important. That was very big deal. And to think also that at this point we had Elimination Chamber, and we're not going to have one this year. Or in 2022, it looks like we don't have Elimination Chamber in at all, and we don't know if that's just going to be... I think that's going to be used for a Raw or SmackDown at some point. I think that's what they're going to use it for. Because I don't think they're going to just let that go, but it doesn't need to be a pay-per-view. But I think they can make them matches where they can put them on Raw or SmackDown and use them as gimmicks, which is what I think they're going to do with some of these things. Since some of the pay-per-views are not going to be gimmicked, they could use some of the gimmicks in specialty editions of Raw or SmackDown, which I think what they're going to be doing down the line pretty soon. Because I think that's going to help them when they do some themed episodes, whether it's a retro show or whether it's something else they can do. Why not? And I bet you USA or Fox will be happy to see those kind of things happen. So they're going to probably be happy to see something like that. So I don't think I would rule out Elimination Chamber coming back. I think it could come back at some point. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. We're at an hour. That's all I wanted to do. And I'll come back and we'll do another part of the year wrestling. Most likely, I'll probably will go ahead and watch WarGames. And I'll probably go do another part of the Year in Wrestling 2021. We'll do more of that coming up on the next episode. We'll just do probably like another hour. Like, this is that time of year where I start doing extra hours because I know instead of other shows that'll probably take time off, this is a 365 wrestling it is. So with the extra time, why not do more content? Which you always know, around Christmas time, I'm like Santa. I do give the gift of more content, more episodes for you to catch because some of your other episodes will not be around. There won't be as much content being done. So I want to be there to fill the void for some of you that don't have content to listen to. So if you need some good wrestling content, something new, and continue to go on, then of course, yours truly, King of Podcasts, will do that for you. So anyway, yes, I will probably go and do a recap of TakeOver WarGames coming up here on the program this Sunday night going on the Monday, and we'll then also talk about more of the year of wrestling. I'll include that into the mix after that as well. So let's go and do a little bit of WarGames. The plan for that is going to be 2 WarGames matches. The women's side, Io Shirai, Raquel Gonzalez, Cora, Jade, Kaylee Ray against Mandy Rose, Gigi, Dolin, Jacy, Jayne of Toxic Attraction, and Dakota Kai. I think I'm going to say that it's going to be most likely the real standouts in NXT 2.0. The 2.0 side is going to win on both matches. So I think Toxic Attraction and Dakota Kai win that match. In the men's match, Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, LA Knight, and Pete Dunne taking on Carmelo Hayes, Bron Breakker, Grayson Waller, Tony D'Angelo. Yes, I'll take the rookies on that end. NXT Tag Team titles, Imperium, Fabian Aichner, Marcel Barthel, Legado Fantasma, Joaquin Wilde, and Raul Mendoza, or Kyle O'Reilly and Von Wagner. Well, actually, I don't know who won that match. I wasn't paying attention. So I have to go look for that real quick. Hang on a second. This is where I look at Fightful, and they didn't give me the current stats of what's going on, so I had to go back and look here. Actually, it's Imperium versus Kyle O'Reilly and Von Wagner, which I think Kyle O'Reilly and Von Wagner will win over Imperium. That's just what it looks like. Cameron Grimes versus Duke Hudson, hair versus hair match. Cameron Grimes already got a little touch-up, and I think Cameron Grimes probably gets the rest of his hair taken off. I don't think they're going to mess with Duke Hudson. And Duke Hudson and just some of these other guys you have in here doesn't make much of a difference to me, but, they got what they got. Roderick Strong, along with Diamond Mine, will take on Joe Gacy with Harland for the NXT Cruiserweight title, and I think Joe Gacy will win that. We're going to see a changing of the guard. The NXT 2.0 stars will now rightfully take their place, according to Vince and others, that the new guard's going to get the belts, and the rest of the talent that has been held up, who knows what happens to them, but they're not going to be, front and center like they were in the black and yellow brand. Anybody that was part of that black and yellow brand, they're going to probably lose. I feel like it's pretty obvious. Maybe they'll give us a swerve there and there, but that's what I think they'll do anyway. Okay, so I'll do that. Come back for a WarGames post show here on the program. And now, also don't forget, next week, I will also do a post show. Well, actually, not only that, hold on. I forgot about NWA Hard Times. That's also this weekend, which I will probably also watch if I can find it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have time. Let me just see where we are. That show is coming up. That's right. It's coming up this weekend too, on Saturday. So I'll watch that as well. And so far on that night, we already have scheduled. There will be an in-ring tribute to Jazz, special appearance by Mick Foley, and 11 matches announced, 7 with titles on the line. We already have Mike Knox versus Trevor Murdoch for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Mike Knox, how about that? Blast in the past. Melina versus Camille for the NWA Women's World title. NWA World Television Championship match. Tyrus with Austin Idol versus Scion, and Pope will be the special guest referee. Grudge match, no seconds at ringside. Nick Aldis versus Tom Latimer, so strictly business has fallen apart. We now have this grudge match. National Heavyweight title, Judas with the Sinister Minister will take on Chris Adonis. NWA Tag Team Championship match will be The End versus La Rebellion. Women's World Tag Team titles, Lady Frost and Natalia Markova versus The Hex versus Kylie Ray and Tootie Lynn. Colby Corino will take on Doug Williams. I haven't seen Doug Williams in a while. We have a Junior Heavyweight Championship qualifying match, so that's a title they brought in now, and they're giving a qualifying match, Austin Aries versus Rhett Titus. And there will be a qualifying gauntlet as well. Order of entry to be chosen by random draw. You'll have Jeremiah Plunkett, Victor Benjamin, PG Hawks, Arya Davari, Darius Lockhart, Homicide, C.W. Anderson, Sal Ronaldo, Kenny Morton, Kerry Morton, Jamie Stanley, and Alex Taylor. And the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championships will be also defended. OGK will take on Aaron Stevens and Kratos. Wow. So there's all that to come up. So I'm probably going to do that show as well. That'll give me a lot of reasons. NWA Hard Times 2, we'll have that. And I'll have all this going on when it comes to NXT WarGames. And then I'll still have time to go ahead and talk about the year in wrestling if there is time permitting. How about that? See, I'm booking on the fly here, huh? Amazing. I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening in for another Wrestling Gets Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Thank you for listening to the Wrestling Gets Real podcast. For more information on how to subscribe to the show, how to share the Wrestling Gets Real podcast to listeners like you, and check out the latest wrestling headlines, go to WrestlingIsReal.com. That's WrestlingIsReal.com.